My name is Lydia Carter, and I am 28 years old. I live in the small town of Crescent Valley, where everything seems peaceful on the surface, but below that facade lies a complicated web of family dynamics and betrayal. Growing up, I was not the favored child. My older brother, Jason, was always the golden boy, receiving all the accolades and privileges while I stood in the shadows, invisible and neglected. My parents viewed me as a burden, a disappointment. I was the kid who could never do anything right, and every time I tried to reach for their support, I was met with condescension. If I received a B on a test, I was scolded for my mediocrity. Conversely, Jason could stumble through life, collecting Ds, yet still receive praise as if he were some kind of academic genius. This created a chasm between us. It did not take long for resentment to take root in my heart. Over the years, I found myself resenting everything about Jason. He was the apple of our parents' eye, and I was the unwanted child, the shadow lurking in the corner. I can remember family gatherings where every conversation revolved around his accomplishments. Whether it was sports, school, or just simply the latest gadget he had acquired, I became the silent observer. As I repressed my feelings, I sought the help of a therapist to help me deal with my anger and jealousy. They told me to find forgiveness, but no amount of therapy could erase the bitterness I felt for my brother and the neglect I received from my family. One day, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a trending topic that caught my attention. People were faking serious illnesses to see how their families would respond. It was shocking, yet I felt an odd sense of curiosity. I wondered if I could do something similar. If I pretended to have cancer, would my family finally pay attention to me? Would they show the same concern that they showed for Jason? With my heart heavy with shame and determination, I decided to give it a try. I devised a plan. I would casually drop the news at our next family dinner together. This was not a normal occurrence, as we only gathered during holidays or significant family events. I figured if I did it at a dinner, I could get the maximum impact since everyone would be there, and I wanted them to see how they made me feel, worthless, invisible, and unloved. The day finally arrived, and as I looked at the table filled with delicious food, I could barely choke down my nervousness. My brother was talking about his recent job promotion at our grandfather's million-dollar company, and I felt the familiar pang of jealousy rise in my chest. When Jason finished boasting, I cleared my throat and spoke up. My heart raced, but I managed to say the words, "I have cancer." The reactions were immediate and mixed, but not in ways I had imagined. My parents exchanged quick glances filled with insincerity. Their initial frowns were fleeting, quickly replaced with a sense of indifference as they turned the conversation back to Jason's accomplishments. "Oh, we are so sorry to hear that. Anyway, did you hear about Jason's promotion?" They barely acknowledged my words, almost as though I had told them the weather forecast. Amid my disbelief, an intense flame of anger burst within me. I felt betrayed, inconsequential, and disgusted that they would easily brush aside my turmoil in favor of Jason's latest achievement. I yelled out, "Are you serious?" My voice was raw, filled with hurt and disbelief. In an explosive moment of rage, my father stood up and slapped me across the face. My world tilted as I felt the sting and the humiliation surge through me. All the shouts I had repressed over the years erupted like lava from a volcano. I retaliated, punching him right in the nose, striking him again in the stomach, then landing a hit on his jaw. I walked away from that table, flipping off my family as I left them in stunned silence. As I stormed out, my girlfriend followed me to the car. I could feel the tension thick in the air as we sat in silence, the engine humming softly. I could not look at her. She tried to speak, pleading for me to listen, but I was numb. I ignored her completely, focusing instead on the chaos swirling inside me. Once we got home, I felt the weight of the night pressing down on me. I stumbled into the pantry to grab a bottle of beer, hoping to drown my sorrows. I fell asleep on the couch, the alcohol clouding my mind. Hours later, I was jolted awake by the sound of my girlfriend's phone ringing. The screen lit up with messages from an unknown number. As I read through the texts, my stomach dropped. They were planning something sinister, discussing how they were going to steal my money and run off together. I could not believe what I was seeing. My heart raced faster as I recognized that the unknown number belonged to none other than my brother. The sheer betrayal hit me like 1,000 bricks crashing down. I woke her up immediately, fury surging through my veins. I could not control my voice as I shouted, "We are done, pack your stuff." She looked confused, frightened even, as she hastily gathered her belongings into trash bags, all of this happening in the dead of night. When she tried to plead her case and reason with me, I would not hear it. I felt so betrayed, and all I wanted was to assert control over my life that had spiraled into chaos. Once she left, my heart shattered. I cried myself to sleep, consumed by a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and despair. The next morning, I woke to an alarmingly full phone. 50 missed calls and over 100 unread texts filled my screen. My family had cut me off, and I was no longer welcome in their lives. They had even informed me that I had been removed from their will. I glanced at the messages, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. "I do not care," I replied defiantly. They had no idea what I was capable of. I managed the family's insurance, rent, and other financial matters, and perhaps most critically, I had evidence against Jason regarding the embezzlement that had been plaguing our grandfather's company for months. My brother had been living beyond his means, siphoning off money that was not his. Fueling my revenge, I gathered all of my evidence and prepared myself to take action. I contacted our grandfather's company anonymously, detailing the web of treachery that Jason had spun. I provided the documents that laid out the facts, receipts, and email exchanges that would undoubtedly lead to his undoing. My knowledge of the inner workings of the family's finances only added to the weight of my claims. Days later, I received confirmation. Jason had been fired from the family business, and shortly after, the truth unraveled. My brother was arrested for his fraudulent activities, and I felt a sense of vindication as justice began to take its course. But my family's downfall did not end there. With Jason out of the picture, their financial situation crumbled. They struggled to pay rent, burdened by the reality of their own choices. It was, in a way, poetic. When I learned they were evicted from their comfortable home and forced to live in a cramped apartment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. It was a cathartic moment. I had been the one standing in the shadows, the despised daughter who finally took a stand. My heart, once heavy with resentment, now danced with freedom. I did not wish pain upon them, but I wanted them to understand the consequences of their actions. The family that had ridiculed and neglected me now faced the ramifications of their treatment. They had messed with the wrong person. This journey of revenge hardened me, but also offered me clarity. Sometimes, the only way out of darkness is to embrace your power, your truth, even when it feels wrong. While I did not celebrate their struggles, I recognized that they had each made choices that led us to this point. They failed to see my worth while I had been proving mine all along. I now had the opportunity to reinvent myself beyond their shadows. With hard work and newfound confidence, I focused on rebuilding my life. I enrolled in classes, leaned into the support of friends, and slowly began to heal. I became more than just the unwanted child. I became a survivor, propelled by the flames of perseverance and a fierce determination to rise above. Yet, as time went by, the unexpected twist of fate soon revealed itself. Just as I thought I had closed the chapter on my past with my family, my grandfather reached out. It turned out he had always had my back, deeply troubled by how my parents treated me. He had witnessed the embezzlement, but his hands had been tied by family loyalty. We began to rebuild our relationship, and as we talked for hours, I found solace in being understood. Even when my family had failed me, in the end, life brought me more than just revenge. It granted me the strength to reclaim my narrative and the wisdom to embrace compassion, both for myself and for others. In the cycle of family dynamics, the lessons learned became fuel for a better future. I realized that revenge might have given me that initial satisfaction, but what I truly craved was peace, autonomy, and a life of my choosing. And as I moved forward, that became my truest victory.